I'm not sure how you've been preparing for Thanksgiving, but so that I can deal with all of the struggle and the stomach issues, I've been chugging some raw milk. So, which I'm gonna down here. I've been building up my tolerance. Oh, sweet, sweet, chunky goodness.
Straight from the calf.
Right from the cow. Just put it in your mouth. Oh God, what an asshole. Welcome to the 2 month review. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books. This is our weekly podcast where we break down a book bit by bit, section by section, talk about it, analyze it, have fun, make jokes. I'm joined as always by Kaya Stromanis, senior editor at Open Letter Books, translator from the Latvian. How are you today, Kaya?
I am exhausted.
You building up? You drinking raw milk?
I
You're in the
am not, which is that's why
you
I'm
know,
tired.
hashtag
I
raw milk yet?
No, that's why I'm tired. I'm very, very low on the raw milk vitamins.
You have all those pasteurized chemicals that are infecting your body.
I don't even have that.
I
I don't
believe
even have
it
that.
causes autism. I don't
I'm
know.
like marginally lactose intolerant, so I have none of them. I have none of the things.
So, well, I have a couple of things at top that I want to talk about, but one thing, if anyone's watching this, I am not a Pirates fan. I just didn't do my hair today, and this is Kaya's hat, and so we could reenact the Paul Skeens Rookie of the Year celebration. Like, if anyone hasn't seen this meme where he wins Rookie of the Year, he and Livy Dunn are sitting on a couch, it'd be like, "We're gonna be reading Confidence Band by Herman Melville," and you like cheer.
Woohoo! Yeah.
And that's my Paul Skeens interaction. So, fun one for anyone who's a baseball fan. The other thing, the most important thing is that we do have merchandise now. I'll have a link to it, but on TeePublic, there's a Grifter's Gonna Grift t-shirt with the Fidel steamboat and just says Grifter's Gonna Grift in like a script font beneath. It's on sale for 40% off at TeePublic all week through, if you're listening to this on before Thanksgiving or at Thanksgiving, it goes through the weekend, I believe. I'm not sure how long their Black Friday sale lasts, but 40% off. I
Everything's
was gonna say
always
if you miss
discounted
it,
on
it'll
their
be
website.
yeah, if you miss it, it'll be 40% off next week for something.
Get it as a sticker, get it as a coffee mug, get it as a wall print, get it as a sweatshirt,
Tote bag?
get it as a tote. It looks really good as a tote. It looks really
Absolutely.
good as a tote. And that's the little what is it? A little pearl in there is that the steamboat. We have renamed it the Fidel in that
Yeah.
picture. Very
Yeah.
nice lithograph.
Very cool. Very cool. Good job, Kai, putting that together. And
Yes.
all your proceeds go to sponsor this podcast, I guess. Because
Yeah.
all your proceeds are just our grift. So
Yeah. All your proceeds go to sponsor my life from 2025 onward.
all $8 that we will earn from the sales of this t-shirt will be definitely grifted and spent in inappropriate ways on things that you probably wouldn't approve of. So
Or as I say, public school lunches in Wisconsin are not they're not expensive, but they're also not free.
yeah, there is that. The other thing I want to complain about off the top for everyone who's listening, because I assume that you guys are fans of Open Letter to some degree, is that NPR did us dirty. NPR has been doing the country dirty for many, many years as a crappy liberal centrist organization that sane washes Trump and is like overall like just so namby-pamby that they don't do anything to progress anything of use. So take that NPR shots fired, but the shots are fired because they have their best books of the year thing that comes out with 352 books or some random ass number. And they include Physics of Sorrow, published by Norton in 2024, and praise the fact that this book is now available, which it has not been. It has been available for ages since 2009, I believe. We even did a 2 month review podcast on it. There are multiple episodes and multiple pieces written on the 3% website by Santiago Maurice about Physics of Sorrow. Like this is a book that is well trafficked, has sold
Yeah.
exceptionally well, is known to anyone in the public, but NPR incapable of doing research, incapable of holding a liberal position, and just generally junk, screwed it all up. So take that NPR. Fuck you. That's my final.
Yeah.
I'm sick of
That's
this. I'm sick of getting overlooked for things that we do first. So I'm a little
and
fired up, little lathered.
yeah, and not just I think 2015 was maybe their official pub date. That was one of the first books when I had
Yeah.
just started at the press. But that's the other thing is that the receipt, so the book is not listed on our website anymore because the rights were
Were stolen from us by the Wiley
yeah,
Agency
I'm
because they
not going to
lied
say
to us,
I'm not going to
explicitly
say
lied to us. They've
Not
been
going to say
I have the
reverting.
receipts on that. I have the emails where
Yeah.
they were supposed to renew the contract and then didn't. So liars there too.
Yeah, but
Lathers.
I was going to say that I mean the receipts exist. There are excerpts on the website. There are the articles that Santiago wrote. There, never mind that the NEA gave Angela a translation fellowship for that same year. So it's just embarrassing because this is a book that Open Letter had been selling for a decade. And it's just discounted because Norton is doing it. Anyway, super embarrassing. As the daughter of a journalist, I'm very embarrassed at the lack of research done there.
As an
And
NPR
thank you to
hater, as an
and
NPR hater, I'm happy.
thank you to the uh, friends and followers on Instagram who have either reposted or expressed their empathy, or in some cases even just created their own posts calling NPR out on that, because it's not just our book. And it's not just Open Letter as a small nonprofit press. And unfortunately, it is not an isolated incident, and it just shouldn't be happening. People
Shame.
should be doing better.
Shame on them. I think they also like, I mean, if they're gonna treat their list like that, they're essentially like falling into the realm of like what I do, where it's like books I read this year, not like the best books of this year, just the
Yeah.
best books that I encountered this year. So like,
Hmm.
that's a different list. That's not what they're indicating.
Nope.
No, I garbage. I deleted that. I also like saw some of the New York Times 100 notable books. Ooh, that's a rough list. But that's okay. Neither here nor there for complaining about contemporary literature right now because we're in the 1800s. We're in 1847-ish, 48-ish when this book takes place, not when it was published. And we know that because of the fact that both Emerson and Thoreau are mocked in this section that we're reading for today. And it explicitly kind of denotes like what age they are at the time, placing this in a grand, like chronological space. So, anyways, we are to get to the actual meat of our podcast. We are talking about Melville's Confidence Man. And we are going specifically from chapter 27 through chapter 38. It's a huge chunk of the book, actually.
Which,
Feels like it.
which, I will explain my situation that I am, for once, slightly over prepared, but also outdid myself, and then thereby also ruined myself for this because Um, as those who have been listening along, I've been listening to the audiobook, and my time was ticking down. So I had about 35 hours left to finish the book. So I figured I'd power through, even though I have the hard copy, to just finish out and listening to that narrator's voice. And the last maybe hour and a half, I listened to a few nights ago while falling asleep. So technically, I finished the book, but I have little to no memory of any of it. But that's also another reason why I started listening to at least two other podcasts that did have episodes on Confidence Man, because I was just curious. I was curious to compare what other people were conjecturing or saying about the book.
What did you learn from those podcasts?
That it made all that at least one guy thinks that it's all one guy, that that it's Confidence Man, and that just this
The
one
masquerade.
person, just yeah, that it's the same person all the way through. um and then I will look up really quickly. Give me a second and say which podcast that was, just so I'm shouting out to people. um
Yeah.
that one,
And that
do
makes
do
sense with like
do
the transformations and the like the only thing that doesn't seem to work is that some of the grifters then grift other people and get grifted. So like it like makes
right.
itself into a knot.
Right. And that's the thing that bothered me. Okay, I of course can't find the one. I'll find it and I'll put it in the we can maybe put it in the show notes somewhere. Um but the other podcast, Spine Crackers, are talking about it, and they're sort of split based off of the title. They're at least one of the three of them thinks that it is all one person because it is Confidence Man, his masquerade. Um, So I found that very upsetting that it might all be one guy. Um, but I do buy into the theory that it is that the Confidence Man, his masquerade, is more of an umbrella term for the commercial world that is kind of sprouting up, blooming in that time. Um, and that or that the confidence man as a singular is more of an umbrella term. But that if you just think about the logistics of it, this is a riverboat, it's a steamboat. And how one of the things that one of the guys on Spine Crackers says, and I fully agree, is that if it is one guy, how many passengers are on this boat, and how simple of a time is it where if this is one guy doing multiple disguises that nobody recognizes him over
Yeah,
and
I
over
don't think that
again.
the
And
book is
that's the
supposed
part
to be
that I
realistic.
find, but I mean, I guess, but then there is, um, I kind of prefer that thing where like just the logistics of it seems sort of impossible for it to just be one guy.
See, I was taking it in the most abstract term, and that it's not confidence man doesn't indicate a human being, it indicates mankind. Like the confidence in mankind, and that his masquerade is like the evolutions. And then this section, as we switch, and as the footnotes have pointed out, are more like Eastern and Vishnu influenced, and it's like the kind of transformation of man and like the thing. So I saw it more as like mankind, but that might be totally goofy as well.
That's the angle that I agree with. That's what I meant by like an umbrella term
Yeah.
for mankind. But yeah, I found it really upsetting the first podcast I listened to where this I mean everyone has their opinions and their beliefs and their takes on it, and I really like that you can sort of have your takes. But the
Is
first
that
podcast I listened to, and I was just like, this could be one person. I found that very upsetting.
is the one person also the cosmopolitan?
Yes,
It's the same guy. He just transforms and he becomes
yes,
inconsistent, which they talk about in this section in
yes.
particular,
And
is the
then this
author addressing the inconsistencies of character.
Right. And then the Cosmopolitan, I don't know, I don't remember if they debated whether or not that was the sort of true form or the foundational form, but because I have gone ahead and listened to the rest of the book, I think there is an argument to be made that this is like after he's identified and becomes a cosmopolitan, he does not shift anymore.
No, yeah, I know
He
he does not. That was part of the footnotes for that one section that kind of keyed in on that, but he is the same person then, and seems even through this section seems to like be addressing the ills of the world in some way, of like trying to eliminate them or like rectify them in a positive light, after every person that you encounter up to then is like a deceiver in some way, is the masquerade. Like maybe he's unmasking the certain parts, to put it in that terms. I don't know. I don't know. The book is so confusing in so many ways. And I know that people online have been like, I was really losing the thread at times. And there are moments in here where I was losing the thread. This.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And this is another thing that I appreciated that the Spine Crackers guys were saying, that at least one of them was like, he's like, does this just how people talk in the 1850s? Like, does this just their vocabulary? Because I don't know that I'd be able to hold a conversation with someone. And so they at times found it hard to kind of stick along with as well, which again is why I'm really glad that I did decide to go with the audiobook, because the way and the cadence and the rhythm in which the voice actor is reading is super helpful in consuming it.
Some of the terminology is a little bit different. Like when you talk about the mystic will come up later in this session. And the mystic is like transcendentalist rather than like seance mystic. And that threw me off a little bit. But sometimes I have a hard time following the kind of philosophical arguments that take place, because sometimes they're referencing things like, we'll point this out in a second too, that don't exist. And it's like a weird joke that like, if you don't know that, like it becomes very confusing as to like what their viewpoints can be at times. Or I found that in this section. I also like there's a chunk of this. I read like a bunch of it and I was locked in. And then I read like 20 pages and I was like not following anything. You could have given me Jack and Jill book and I would not have figured it out. I was like on a, an ADD moment of like nothing made any sense to me. So there's that. But let's start like chapter 27. We're back to our Indian hater. Which this title is part of like why this section is very funny. There's a couple jokes that there's one that I truly didn't get until I read it like the fourth time. But chapter 27 is some account of a man of questionable morality, but who, nevertheless, would seem entitled to the esteem of that eminent English moralist who he said he liked a good hater. And I think anything that says he liked a good hater is I'm on board with as a prominent hater today. That is great.
Yeah, and this is, I think, also for me, this is the where I started paying more attention to the actual chapter titles,
Oh
um,
yeah.
because they are so expository.
Yeah, and they're very funny. So this is so what this is back to our what we left them last when we left last week. We had the Cosmopolitan had boarded, and the Cosmopolitan is talking to someone who is not the guy with the coonskin hat, but the guy who comes up afterwards. There's a guy with a coonskin hat who's being sold like a boy to work on his farm. He rejects it, then he maybe buys it, and then there's a stranger comes up and is like, "Oh, you Cosmopolitan, we're talking the coonskin cap guy, and that guy's sucks." And he's like, "Why does he suck?" And he like sort of goes into a whole thing about hating Indians, which is like I don't remember how these things connect. This is the connective tissue is where I'm lose the thread on this book. Is like, why did this go from one thing to another? I don't remember. But like he goes on and tells this whole story of someone named Colonel John Moredock, who is born because his mother is a widow twice over because her Indians came and killed, or Native Americans came and killed her husbands two times, and then she goes to like move away to a different part of the land to Illinois, and she gets killed along with like everyone on their boat but this guy. So he's like a boring, quote unquote, Indian killer. He made no avowal, but to kill Indians had become his passion. As an athlete, he had few equals, as a shot, none, in single combat, not to be beaten. So this dude like just goes around wrecking havoc and is like, Indians are absolutely bad, no question about it.
Just a quiet vengeance, yeah, and then
Just
goes on to he takes his revenge very specifically, which
he's
you know,
1800 John Wick.
which I yeah 1800s John Wick, which I guess is I mean it's not better than just going and slaughtering everybody, but yeah, he's yeah, it actually, I'm just leave it at that. He's 1800s John Wick. That's it. That's what it is. That's the section.
And then, and of course, the Cosmopolitan replies back with like what he seems to be doing throughout this, where he's like trying to create forgiveness or like acceptance and begins with like charity, charity, exclaim the Cosmopolitan. Never sound judgment without charity. And is like, well, is outside deceived you. He's talking about the other guy, but it came close to deceiving me. However, we need to charity, like poetry, should be cultivated, if only for its being graceful. That story strikes me with even more incredulity than wonder. To me, some parts don't hang together. If the man of hate, how could if the man of hate, how could John Moredock also be the man of love? And is basically like, this is a lie, which is a weird. I mean, also very funny, where he's basically like, no, you need to be nice to the coonskin cap guy. That guy might have looked rough, but underneath you had like a good heart. And then this Moredock story you told me is bullshit. Like it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work together. What are you talking about here, buddy? Which is like half of this book where I'm like, wait, what are you talking about here, Melville? Like,
Which, I mean, if we assume that the Cosmopolitan might be all of the con men, going back to the section where the guy sits down, the one guy comes and sits down next to the old man and is like, "What's your vice? Wine? No wine. Cigarettes? No cigarettes." Well, okay, stories and like
yeah,
to having now being like, "No, the story's not storying. It's not."
right. That's true. I think an argument about misanthropy and infidelity, which is interesting too, where he's like very like anti-misanthropic. The Cosmopolitan as well, which is again like in terms of like the philosophical nature of the book, like we like it would being seems like you'd be inclined towards misanthropy after being like scammed over and over again and encountering mankind who's just trying to get ahead and get a grift. Why wouldn't you become misanthropic and want to like go out and live in the middle of the woods without anyone around to like screw with you? Except then, of course, like the Indians will come and ruin you according to this person and this belief, which is, just let's just put it as racist and just put that together
Yeah.
there. but there is a tendency within this to like fall towards misanthropy. And the Cosmopolitan's like,
Hmm.
nope, 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 nope. Don't do that. And he's also like he says that infidelity and misanthropy are kind of like the same thing. They're his friend's like, don't you jumble them together? He's like, I do not jumble them. They're coordinates. For misanthropy, springing from the same root with disbelief or religion is twin with that. And then ends with saying, in either case, the vice consists in a want of confidence. So we're back to our confidence bit. And like you have to have confidence.
Hmm.
If you don't have confidence, you're gonna be bad. You're gonna be a
Yeah.
misanthrope
Yep.
or some sort of cheater. Um, there is so let me go on about that for just a little bit longer. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, there are enough chapters on it, so go for it.
there's like a million. Um,
Oh, chapter 29 is where it also gets, sorry, you go on, but I want to talk about their names.
29 is a huge one for me too. So I was trying to get through that. So this is 28. This is page 224 in the Delkey edition. Like you, said the stranger, I can't understand the misanthrope. So far as my experience goes, either mankind is worthy one's best love, or else I've been lucky. Never has it been my lot to have been wronged, though but in the smallest degree. Cheating, backbiting, superciliousness, disdain, hard-heartedness, and all that brood I know but by report. Cold regards tossed over the sinister shoulder of a former friend, ingratitude in a beneficiary, treachery in a confidant. Such things may be, but I must take somebody's word for it. Now the bridge that has carried me so well over, shall I not praise it? And then our Cosmopolitan replies, in gratitude to the worthy bridge not to do so. Man is a noble fellow, in an age of satirists, I am not displeased to find one who has confidence in him and bravely stands up for him. So there seems to be something here. This is where like I feel like this book is odd and like it sort of gets addressed in the chapter where the narrator directly addresses the audience, but is that like this guy, this stranger was like such a dick just a few minutes ago and like a dick overall and was like, these are bad people. This coonskin cat guy is bad. And now he's like, well, I've never, nothing bad's ever happened to me. I love mankind. Everyone, I don't understand why you wouldn't. No, these people there must be cheaters and, bad people out there. I wouldn't know about it. I'd have to hear about it secondhand. And the Cosmopolitan's like, right on, humanity is good. All praise humanity, which is like such a radical change from like where it was a few minutes ago. And that it's moments like that in this book where I feel like I'm just missing something fundamental.
I mean, possibly, but also because I identify with that feeling, but I also think that it, like it's the nature. I mean, I keep going back to like it's the nature of the con, right? Where, um, you you switch tact at a moment at the drop of a hat to appeal to your audience, and if one angle isn't working to serve your purpose, to achieve your purpose, then you switch.
What
And the
did
faster you
yes,
switch and the more seamlessly you switch, and maybe the more confusing you can make it, I guess, like just keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking.
is anyone scamming anyone in this section?
um
We'll get to the
I
question
don't
of money in a minute.
Yeah, I don't think so. This
I
is
don't
right
think so
after
either.
he asked the other guy for money.
No, he asked for money in a minute.
I thought he asked the other guy for money and then that guy went away and then this other guy comes up and it was like,
God.
you did it all wrong, or like, what are you doing?
Uh oh
Oh, no, you're okay. No, never mind. You're right. You're right. Never
no,
mind.
it's later
That
on.
comes later. That comes
Yes.
later.
This comes later.
Um,
And it's very weird. No, I talk about that because it reminds me of like a David Lynch scene.
right. No, I don't think anyone's being overtly scammed here.
So either. They're just having this conversation and they're like kind of
Yeah.
buddies. They're like, we're all, and the Cosmopolitan keeps saying, like, to tell the truth, I have today met so many old friends, all free-hearted, convivial gentlemen, that really, though for the present I succeed in mastering it, I'm at bottom almost in the condition of a sailor who's stepping ashore after a long voyage. Ere night reels with loving welcomes, his head of less capacity than his heart. Like this, like very like broad stroke love of mankind. Whereas like up until this point, most people were kind of despicable.
Yeah.
There is like a tone shift, and that does seem to tie into like some of the notes and some of the ideas of like this being some sort of evolution, and where like the confidence, can you have confidence in man? We're getting like the other half of it, where they fully have confidence in man, whereas up till now, people keep saying like, I'll tell you a story and take your money. Do you have confidence in me? Do you have confidence in my story? And here they're like, we just have confidence in mankind writ large. And when you tell a story, you're telling me a lie. Like every story hides a lie. But
Hmm.
and like even like the when the cosmopolitan comes on board, he's like penny for your thoughts, where he's offering money for a story. Like there's like everything's sort of inverted after that middle chapter.
Yeah.
But to what end, you probably have a better idea if you've got a way of like closing out this book and having it like, because of the ending, make sense of everything that came before in some way. I'm still like in media race. So if this is completely wrong and people are listening to this being like, you're an idiot, um, well, it's probably just I'm an idiot, but that's okay.
I'll remind you that I fell asleep during the last hour and a half of the audiobook. So
That could be
whatever
eight
I
pages, probably, to be
it
honest.
could, yeah, whatever I may or may not have
Audiobooks are slow.
sponged up is it's anyone's guess.
So the names, we get to chapter 29, the boon companions. So here they're still chatting. They're just gonna chat. They're gonna drink a bunch of wine and chat is all they're gonna do about like life and about like mankind and like various other things um for a little bit here. For several chapters, in fact. But this is where their names come in. So we found out that the cosmopolitan's name is Francis Goodman, but you can call him Frank. And the stranger that he's talking to is Charles Arnold Noble, who you can call Charlie. What do you want to say about the names?
Um, I'm looking at the one thing I wanted to say is kind of destroyed now by the footnotes, but I think just very basically from a very basic fiction writing level, you have Goodman and Charlie Noble, where immediately that's where we're talking about is anyone scamming anyone. I don't think overtly, but the fact that they both have these very, obviously like Goodman, Noble, like I don't trust either of them instantly.
Yeah, what's ruined by the footnote?
It kind of goes into I mean, it just tells you sort of the etymology of and these meanings of these names. So
Yes.
Frank, literally free. Goodman was a Puritan title. Later, the Cosmopolitan insists that no aspersions be cast on the sons of the Puritans in his presence, and that Goodman is also a cant term for a thief, roisterer, or Don Juan, and the Scottish title for the devil. So
Is there
yeah,
and
it just puts it more academically than
and
my.
Francis also says that it points towards France, perhaps, because there's a lot of French references, and that would be like
Mm-hmm.
the cosmopolitan. That's how I was keeping track
Mm,
and remembering who was who.
gotcha.
He's like Charlie, Charlie, and I can't for some reason whenever I hear the name Charlie, I always end it with Manson. Like that's the first Charlie I think of. As
I
soon
think
as
of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie.
Oh, there's that Charlie too, but
That's a
that
better Charlie.
same. That Charlie
Um,
doesn't have a last name though. Charlie Day.
no. And the other thing about the names that the other reason I don't trust them is because these are the first two
Named
full
people.
names we are given by characters themselves that they present it, and it just seems such a false. It just seems very sus,
And it starts
as the kids
happening
say.
more and more. Like more people get named in the second half. Nobody has a name in the first half. Everyone seems to get named in the second half, which is another like curious, like what does that
Yeah.
mean? Like
It's also the end of the day, and whoever, it's also the end of the day, and I would suppose that anyone who's still on the boat who got on the boat in the morning, you kind of keep seeing the same faces over and over again. But I don't buy into a sense of camaraderie here. I don't. It makes me very suspicious of both of them.
yeah, yeah. This this there's a part on 231, 232 in this edition about the nine jokes too, which has an interesting footnote. So like
Hmm.
who is talking here? This is where I keep getting confused. You have to figure out who's okay. So this is a cosmopolitan. Um, he says humor is, in fact, so blessed a thing that even in the least virtuous product of the human mind, if there can be found but nine good jokes, some philosophers are clement enough to affirm that those nine good jokes should redeem all of the wicked thoughts, though plenty as the populace of Sodom. At any rate, this same humor has something, there's no telling what, no beneficence in it. It is such a catholicon and charm, nearly all men agreeing and relishing it, though they may agree in little else. And in its way, it undeniably does such a deal of familiar good in the world that no wonder it is almost a proverb that a man of humor, a man capable of a good laugh, seem how he may in other things, can hardly be a heartless scamp. And the footnote, it talks about the nine good jokes is one short of the figure demanded by the Jewish god, but exactly matches the number of Vishnu's major avatars which have come. It may also refer to the number of avatars of the confidence man and the number of jokes on the reader in this chapter. Now, the number of avatars of the confidence
Mm,
man would go back to like it's a one man thing and there's nine avatars. There's nine
yeah.
presentations of it. Which I'm gonna just assume is true. I didn't keep track of them when we were going through. I still think it's a metaphor and less of a realism. Um,
Hmm.
like that's neither here nor there at the moment. But the nine jokes on the reader in this chapter, what the fuck? Did you? I mean, I was like, okay, and then I was like, what jokes are in this? Like, what jokes on the reader are in this chapter? This chapter's like 7 pages long, and I found like zero of these things. It wasn't until like
Yeah.
after that that I was like, oh, but okay, I
I
guess
have I have no
these
idea what
jokes.
those could be. I
Okay,
have
so
no
one,
idea.
well, I guess one would be I don't know if this is counts as a joke, but they're getting the booze, and he hands them something with a red label paste on it bearing the capital letters PW. PW, said he at last, perplexedly eyeing the pleasing poser. Now what would PW mean? Shouldn't wonder, said the cosmopolitan gravely. It stands for port wine. You called for port wine, didn't you? Is that a joke on the reader? I don't
Not
understand what that is, in fact.
so not on the
Honestly.
reader.
It's just like okay, dum dum. Of course, stands for port wine. That's what you ordered, buddy. But they go do talk about humor a lot in here, and I think that's fun. Um,
Yeah.
it says like true, it may be said that a man may smile and smile and smile and be a villain, but it is not said that a man may laugh, laugh, and laugh and be one. Is it, Charlie? So like you can smile and deceive people, but if you're laughing, you're a good man. You're always a good person. So there's that.
If
There is that.
anyone knows any of the nine jokes, please tell us.
Please explain that part. So then at the bottom, it does have a thing where it's talking about Aristotle and poetics. And the footnote is both references in this paragraph are to all fools' jokes. Aristotle says no such thing as politics, and the story about Phalaris has no apparent source whatsoever. A reader looking for the first is merely like a green sailor looking for Charlie Noble, but a reader looking for the second becomes enmeshed in a most pertinent web of relationships. So I suppose that is a joke on the reader. Again, one that we would never know, and without like a little pointing, or I would never know, like because it's the part
Same.
I'm referring to is like the popular notion of humor, considered as index to the heart, was seen curiously confirmed by Aristotle, I think in his Poetics, which is not there, who remarks that the least lovable men in history seem to have had for humor not only a disrelish, but a hatred. And this, in some cases, along with the extraordinary dry taste for practical punning. Yeah, I'm down with no puns. I remember it is treated by Phalaris, the capricious tyrant of Sicily, that he once caused a poor fellow to be beheaded on a horse block for no other cause than having a horse laugh.
Mm.
So again, and they're like, funny Phalaris, whatever. This footnote goes on, okay? So this is a joke on the reader, right? So we're talking about these nine jokes on the reader, so on and so forth. You did not read this, okay? Phalaris, the notoriously cruel tyrant of Sicily from about 1570 to about 1550 BC, whose cruel jokes supposedly destroyed vast numbers of human victims, became, 23 centuries later, part of one of the most far-reaching literary hoaxes. In 1695, Charles Boyle edited the spurious Epistles of Phalaris, which were extravagantly praised by Sir William Temple. The great classical scholar Richard Bentley argued for their spuriousness, was viciously attacked for it, and finally demonstrated that they were modern forgeries. Swift, however, in the Battle of the Book, 1704, takes the side of Temple, who aids Aristotle and the other ancients, and Boyle, who spears Bentley. The present context is a new battle of the books, with a spurious Aristotle and a spurious Phalaris representing the ancients. Now, that's like a really elaborate, like sort of joke on the reader, I suppose, and one that again requires a lot of back knowledge. Like
Yeah,
Phalaris didn't
it's
ring
too
any
much.
bells for me. And I don't know,
No.
one of the things that's interesting about these footnotes too is that they predate by, a half century the existence of the internet. So like now if you look
Mm,
at
mhm.
Phalaris, like I bet you get a whole different set of like this information in a different compounded way. Whereas if this is like a part of like tying it into a large literary hoax seems fitting and apropos of the book, but also is kind of weird as like a joke on the reader because I don't know that, you know?
No.
Not a ha-ha joke, I'll tell
I
you
don't
that.
know anything in comparison to the 1850s. I know nothing.
Yeah, same.
I
And so
know nothing.
footnote goes on. This is one of the longest footnotes, and this is, I mean, this is where it's interesting. To see the reader's position, one must first recognize that the context is all about the relation between laughter and character. If the reader laughs, or if he doesn't laugh, he puts himself within this context. The reader has just been given the suggestion that 9 good jokes might redeem all wicked thoughts. Now he encounters an array of jokesters, stretching from Phalaris through the author of supposed epistles and Swift to the cosmopolitan and Melville. So we are then placed, I suppose, like the most base level of this footnote is that we're placed in the position where if we laugh at this, we're good people, and if we don't laugh at it, we're not good people. And to bring this home, he puts together like a the ancestry, whatever, of like number of authors who are in on this joke, who have been part of this joke up through Melville, making this joke about this Phalaris, which I'm curious now, what's in the book? What is it that like everyone like made up and made such a big deal? Like, what are his epistles? What is happening in here?
Maybe that's another 2 month review.
That could be. I'm gonna find it for sure. I can tell you that. Then, okay, so anything else from this section from the Boon Companion that's interesting? There's jokes. We don't know what the jokes are. They are very praiseworthy of anyone who laughs, which I'm like, okay, I'm on board with that. I like to laugh. I like to try and make people laugh. I'm down with laughter as like a good nature of humanity. There is one part, I don't remember if it's here or later, where it's like you can never think of a bad philanthropist. Here, it's much later, but it's like a genial misanthrope. I thought I had stretched the rope pretty hard in talking of genial hangman. A genial misanthrope is no more conceivable than a surly philanthropist. And I was like, bro, philanthropists are super surly nowadays. I don't know that one holds. That one holds. Things have changed since 1847. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
at
doesn't
some
change.
level, Elon Musk is considered a philanthropist. So,
Mm,
asshole. I'm just taking all my
yeah,
shots today.
let's take them all. Thanksgiving, be grateful for the shots you can take.
I give thanks to the fact that I'm not on X anymore. The okay, anything else from that section? Because then we get the joke that I did take a long time for me to get, and the one that I want to talk about.
My favorite line of the week is in that section, and we will come back to it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then that ends with like essentially something I thought would appeal to you, where he's like, yo, I'm going to tell you about why the press is so good. And
Yes, and it did appeal to me, and especially because of recent interviews I've heard from our beloved NPR with journalists, asking them to just comment on what they think their future holds for the forthcoming Trump administration 2.0.
yeah,
So,
well,
yes.
I don't want to say cut funding to NPR, but I'm not donating. You're not good at your job. Like you should be good at your job. So it goes on, it says, opening with a poetical eulogy of the press and combined with talk inspired by the same. Okay, so I read this bit because the stranger gives this long paragraph about Noah, and then the Cosmopolitan responds, "You deceived me," smiled the Cosmopolitan, as both now resumed their seats. Smiled, didn't laugh, so he could be deceitful there. He was not a good person. I did not get
Hmm.
what the deceit was for like 4 readings of this. I was like, what is he talking about? What is supposed to be funny here? What is going on? Now, just quickly, it's like praise be unto the press, not Faust's, but Noah's. Let us extol and magnify the press, the true press of Noah, from which breaketh the true morning. Praise be unto the press, not the black press, but the red. Let us extol and magnify the press, the red press of Noah, from which cometh inspiration. It goes on, praise be to the press, the rosy press of Noah, which giveth rosiness of hearts by making men long to tarry at the rosy wine. Who hath babblings and contentions, who without cause inflicteth wounds. Praise be unto the press, the kindly press of Noah, which knitteth friends, which fuseth foes, who may be bribed, who may be bound. Praise be unto the press, the free press of Noah, which will not lie for tyrants, but make tyrants speak the truth. Okay, do you get the joke? It is spelled out once you finally get it. It's
No.
not talking about printing. It's talking about the wine press. It's talking about Noah's drunkenness.
Mm,
That's where it does say, like, praise unto it the rosy press, which gives rosiness of hearts by making men long to tarry at the rosy wine. We're talking about not the black press, not the printed press, but the red press, the wine
that's
making.
why the red press.
Why is it like who can be bribed, who can be bound? Praise unto it because it won't lie for tyrants, but make tyrants speak the truth because they're drunk. It's all about
Yes.
getting wasted and making wine. It's praise for a wine press.
Beautiful.
So long. Took me so long to get there. I feel so like embarrassed for my reading capability that it took me 4 times to be like, I'm really not following this at all.
I didn't, I mean, I listened to it or read it and they're talking about the red press and I'm like, oh, it's just all I thought it was like red wave. Like I'm so mired in this from a 2024 political standpoint that I at times find zero jokes.
Yeah, yep. So
I just find broken hope and nausea.
that's because you haven't been drinking enough of this raw milk. I'm telling you, raw milk combats all of the disease and autism that they put into pasteurization.
And heroin as well, I think,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Is that the
heroin will help
new
you out. Yeah,
ugh.
more heroin, more raw milk. That's where I'm at. That's where my future lies. Also, no
The
offense to any
the
Jewish.
liar and the vine forever.
Yeah, and also no intentional harm towards autistic people. But I do know RFK believes that every vaccine causes autism and is like generally like a piece of shit. Um, There is one other line, one other footnote from the section that does come up a couple times where it refers to the fact that now that it's dark, they make a lot of references to hidden suns, that the sun is never evident, but there's lots of like sun or light sources that are obfuscated in one way or another, and that shows up in the section too, specifically of I should be afraid to say what I have sometimes thought that hidden sun might be. Do you think it's true light? No, no, no. It refers to like this a couple times, and I wonder too if that's the light of mankind, the hope, the grace, the joy, like it's hidden. So like the confidence man hides the sun, so to speak, was my simplistic
Hmm.
like quick
Yeah.
read of it.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of stuff about madness, anger, the surly philanthropist, which is impossible. And then we get to your part where he's like, yo, I have something to ask you. I have something to confide in you. So we get another play on the word confidence. Now, what is it, Frank? Love affair? No, not that. What then, my dear Frank? Speak. Depend on me to the last. Out with it. Out it shall come then, said the cosmopolitan. I'm in want, urgent want of money. So you get like, it's like, I just wrote, oh boy, here we go again.
Yep.
Like, yep, we're on this. And he's like, give me $50. And you're like, whoa, that's so much money at this
Yeah.
time. Like, just an insane amount of money. Um, and the guy's like, you're because it's like $2 for like all like 18 boxes of cure-all or whatever it was. Like there's like
Yeah.
the prices are like fairly low. Someone asked for $10 at one point in time. 50 is like an outrageous sum.
But isn't that the trick where you ask like you go to your parents and you
Assessment.
ask them for 50 bucks because all you want is like 20. If
Yeah.
you say, "Can I get 50 bucks?" and they'll be like, "No, but here's 20." And you're like, "Okay, that's fine." And you get exactly what you want. So if you highball someone and you're asking,
$50
and
today would be $1,800.
yeah, that's a lot.
That's a significant amount. You don't just ask someone for
It's
1,800 bucks.
no, that's a month's salary for some people.
But then, okay, so here again, maybe a little lost. Maybe I just need to reread it or whatever. This is where I started to be like, okay, cool. Chapter 32, showing that the age of magic and magicians is not over. He pulls out a bunch of coins, puts them in a circle around Charlie, and then takes them back. Right?
Um,
He says, meantime, he within the magic. Okay, so the Cosmopolitan rose. He pulls out a bunch of money.
oh yeah. Hmm.
Here you go. The cosmopolitan rose. The traces of previous feeling vanished. Looking steadfastly at his transformed friend a moment, then taking 10 half eagles, which are money, the sum that he has just requested, so that would be $50, from his pocket, stooped down and laid them one by one in a circle around him, and retiring a pace, waved his long tasseled pipe with the air of a necromancer, an air heightened by his costume, accompanying each wave with a solemn murmur of cabalistic words. Meantime, he within the magic ring stood suddenly rapt, exhibiting every symptom of a successful charm. A turned cheek, a fixed attitude, a frozen eye, spellbound, not more than the waving wand than by the 10 invincible talismans on the floor. Reappear, 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 O my former friend. Replace this hideous apparition with the blessed shape, and be thy token of thy return the words, my dear Frank. My dear Frank, now cried the restored friend, cordially stepping out of the ring with regained self-possession, regaining lost identity. My dear Frank, what a funny man you are, full of fun as an egg of meat. How could you tell me that absurd story of your being in need? But I relish a good joke too well to spoil it by letting on. Of course, I humored the thing and then on my side put all the cruel airs you would have me. Come, this little episode of fictitious estrangement will but enhance this delightful reality. Let us sit down again and finish our bottle. What the fuck was that? It's like the
I
scene in Fire Walk with Me when the magician goes outside and jumps in a circle and the driveway, creepiest shit. But like, what is happening?
yeah, I don't know, I don't understand why he did it, or I don't know.
Is
So
it?
he takes out the coins. He takes out 10 coins, which is exactly the $50 that he asked for. So he has that money, and then he does this weird thing. And I think at the very base level, I my sense was it was kind of like he asked for money, and this new friend he's made is basically like, methinks not. And so he does this like intricate, awkward thing to sort of like clear the air or like re-break the ice and just make it like, okay, that was just like a weird thing we went through. Haha, you actually have $50. I get it now. Like you were just putting on a show. You have the money, like we're friends again, everything's cool. But it's still it is again the word unsettling. I don't know. I don't know why he
So like the idea that he transforms him by like, I ask you for money, you become something where you're like, oh, I
hmm
don't like you anymore. I don't trust you. I don't,
hmm
you're a deceiver.
right,
And then he's
right,
like, guess what? Didn't need it. I'm going to show you. Now you're going to be go back to being my friend. Like I
right.
broke your
And you're gonna
confidence and
feel
I've
bad
reinstilled
about
your
it.
confidence, I guess.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
what a weird, like just envisioning that as like something that happens in real life would be like baffling. Like if someone
Yeah.
asked me for money and then they just put a bunch of money in a circle around me, it'd be like, and they're like, go back to being who you were. I'd be like, dude, you know what? I'm gonna be not here anymore. Like get out
That's
of
like
bye.
That's like in my dreams when bad stuff happens in dreams that I have. I do Control Z.
Oh my God.
I keep Control Zing it until I just goes
Seriously?
back to where before the bad thing happened in the dream, and then I just like then it's okay.
So I guess another part of that, we gotta speed this up. Another part, so not going through chapter to chapter, but necessarily, but chapter 33 is the next one. There's three of these in the book. The first one we talked about where it said that like characters are, what was the deal? It was basically like characters are weird and they don't like all fit together as a piece. And readers are like, why are they doing strange things? And you're like, you would never say that about people in real life because people in real life do strange things. Therefore, it's more realistic to have characters who are inconsistent and complete. And this one
Yeah,
begins with how unreal all this is. Who did ever dress and act like your cosmopolitan? And who, it might be returned, did ever dress or act like Harlequin? And then it goes on to say, like, in books of fiction, they look not for mere entertainment, but at bottom, even for more reality than life itself can show. Thus, though they want novelty, they want nature too. But nature, unfettered, exhilarated, in effect transformed. In this way of thinking, the people in a fiction, like the people in a play, must dress as nobody exactly dresses, talk as nobody exactly talks, act as nobody exactly acts. It is with fiction as with religion. It should present another world, and yet one to which we feel the tie, which is interesting as like a thesis statement for this book, but for art in general, of being like, yeah, you want things to be realistic, but not really, because things that are realistic are boring and like not really that not great. You want something that's like unique, but you believe it's
yeah,
so like of course these people are acting weird. Of course they're doing this like strange magician trick because if they weren't doing that, you'd just be like blah 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 blah. Here's another couple people on a boat going to the middle of
yeah, yeah. And also, I do think, like I said, I do think that doing some sort of weird ritualistic thing like that in this setting, like it shakes things up. It also it's like a boggle, like it shakes up the board and resets the pieces. Um,
Interesting, interesting comparison. There's like Melvo's like pressing down on that like bubble to boggle and just like boop, and it goes pew, 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 with the little dice like it does in there off of that like metal bouncing trampoline action.
that's trouble.
God damn it, seriously?
Yeah. Boggle is a
Oh,
box that you shake up and then all the letter dice settle.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I'm bad at board games. Only board game I know is cribbage. I'm dedicated to cribbage, hard cribbage, all the way,
Hardcore cribbage.
nothing else. hard for cribbage. I'm hard for pegging with the jack. I just like when I have the
Oh
jack in
no.
my hand. I like when I have the jack in my hand and I can peg. Um, yeah, so then he goes on to talk. I mean, I guess we should jump ahead. This is where I was a little bit confused, but we do get to a point where a guy comes who's referred to as a mystic. And it says
Let's
in which
just go right to the mystic. Yeah.
yep. In which the cosmopolitan is accosted by a mystic, whereupon ensues pretty much such talk as might be expected. Again, snide comment from Melville. Love it. There for it. Um, yeah, what you're gonna say?
Oh, no, I put my finger up because his hair is sweaty.
Ah, well, cool.
That's okay. We can fix it. It'll look just as awesome. Yeah, so the mystic, so Charlie Noble goes to bed.
Leaves behind some
And
wine.
he what?
Leaves behind some wine.
Yes. Charlie Noble essentially goes to bed, and then the mystic comes up to Frank Goodman, and from what I remember, more or less says, "Really, guy? Like you did that all wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
You did everything wrong." And so he starts to coach the Cosmopolitan on how he could have done all of this better.
right. Yes, he does do that. And and this is the one where the mystic who shows up is supposedly Emerson and is like has a lot of details to being Ralph Waldo Emerson. He
Gotcha,
refers into his
gotcha.
friend. His friend is Thoreau. And basically this is like a treaty, almost like an anti-transcendentalist little section of the book. Part of it is based on the fact that like there's a whole thing where like Emerson's like you can't blame the snake charmer who gets bitten by the snake because like it's not the snake's just gonna bite, like what are you doing, like
Hmm.
and they have this conversation about like if that's natural or not, which reminds me of in Juan Jose Sayre's 65 Years of Washington. The whole thing relies or revolves around this concept of this philosophical conversation they have at a party about whether a horse can trip. Can a horse trip over
Mm,
its own legs like a human
hmm.
being can? Or is a horse essentially infallible? If it gets tripped, it's from the outside world. Can a horse just trip on its own? And they're like, no, a horse can't trip. And other people are like, of course, like maybe, it's possible. And this feels like a little bit of that same section. I don't know if they're referring to one another or like if Sire was referring back to this specifically, probably not, but back to that kind of concept of like the nature of things the nature of things is somewhat infallible, and that's kind of a very transcendental take on things. Like the nature is infallible. Man is perfection, underneath everything. Being in touch with nature is the way to like live your life. Everything, then
Yeah.
you closer to religion and God and like the huge universe and all that kind of like just this is big broad stroking it, but more or less that. And the Cosmopolitan like sort of has the anti-view of that. Even though he is like charitable and wants everyone accepted, he's like kind of like these people. They're my impression or my remembrance are kind of like fools.
I mean, he is the cosmopolitan. He's not
Yeah,
thinking small-minded rural. He's thinking, upward and onward. No.
yeah, exactly. They do use the great one of my favorite phrases of an operator in this section. He's like, oh yeah, he's a Mississippi operator. An operator, eh? He operates, does he? My friend, then he's something like what the Indians call a great medicine, is he? He operates, he purges, he drains off all the repletions. And then Egbert is the one who comes, who's Henry David Thoreau. Given their ages of 5 and 40 and about 30, that sets this book in 1848.
Hmm.
That's the
Hmm.
footnote that I was referring to earlier.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Tell me your real philosophy, please." And they start to try and explain things, and the cosmopolitan says, "You speak of a certain philosophy, and a more or less occult one it may be, and hint of its bearing upon practical life. Pray tell me if the study of this philosophy tends to the same formation of character with the experiences in the world." He says it does. Talks about like how they're just kind of mirroring the world and going back and forth on that, and then in the last chapter 38 there's the comment uh from Emerson's character, right? But upon the whole world, it's not even a comment, but it's like referring to him. But upon the whole, he was, to all appearances, the last person in the world that one would take for the disciple of any transcendental philosophy. Though indeed, something about his sharp nose and shaved chin seemed to hint that if mysticism as a lesson ever came in his way, he might, with the characteristic knack of a true Englander, turn even so profitless a thing to some profitable account.
There's so much play with the words and the phrasing still.
Yeah,
It never ceases to astound me. That's kind of a side note and an overall note, but through and through and through, Melville just word plays so good at it.
very, very true. So I mean, I think we're gonna have to go on with this one and maybe even revisit this. This was part where I was like rushing through to get to here, but like that whole section was like also again, I was like these kind of sort of mocking. I feel like Melville's kind of mocking the transcendental philosophy movement at that time and talking about something
Yeah,
else. And also especially works in with like the idea that like this, well, that every writing is artifice. Like this is like a postmodern book in the sense that like he's like, of course this isn't realistic. It's a book. If you don't write a book with like crazy characters, like nobody's gonna pay attention. And then transcendental philosophy stuff like Walden and whatnot is so much like just like this is the earth, this is the thing. And Melville's kind of like, well, you guys are kind of invented this philosophy and inventing yourself too. This is all kind of a little bit fake, but like the intricacies of that in those chapters, I think we're gonna have to revisit once their section is over and they've left.
yeah, absolutely. Because they move so quickly, but they have like they move very quickly, and part of me feels like it's because we are nearing the end of the book, but it's very, very, very
Yeah, and like I've done a
snappy.
poor job without intent of like where a lot of these sections of the conversations get broken up across our weeks. So like the stranger who's talking about the hating Indians, his speech is cut off in the middle. We had half of it last week,
Right,
this take. So there's a bunch of these where I feel like we're like, okay, we got the setup of like the philosophers coming and telling, but we don't have the resolution yet. So like I want to
right.
revisit that later. But it does like yeah, I think it's pretty interesting too. It's also like we're getting to this point where like why we have these people explaining why they believe in mankind and why they like are there for it. They laugh, they like, it's the nature of things. And it's sort of refuting that on some lower level too, while insisting like you be gracious towards everyone and, accept mankind sort of in its flaws
Yeah,
and in a positive light. And then these people are like, well, if you laugh, if you believe in this, that's where perfection is. And Melville's sort of like undercutting that, especially through that first half of the book where the nine confidence men or man or singular or whatever it is basically just demonstrating over and over again how people are fallible. And in a way, this transcendental philosophy always feels like that to me of like, come on, believe with this. Like, believe in my depiction of the world and the universe. Like, it's kind of religious. Like, this is also talking way out of school. I haven't read anything like this in 35 years, but my impression back then was always like, I was not super interested. Like, I love like
hmm,
things that are quote unquote like transcendental or spiritualist or like non-rational in various ways. But the way that it was presented, the way that when I was reading that and like was sort of in like, going through that for like the literature GRE test and whatnot, I always felt a little bit like you were being like pitched. Like you're
yeah,
being pitched something. Like this is the way to live. We had our little hut on Walden Pond and like live self-sustainingly and with no interaction. This is the way to do it. And it always felt a little bit like try hard of like
yeah,
this is the right way.
yeah. And I mean, isn't is that what you're saying? What's kind of happening in this section? Because as we're talking about this out loud, I also feel kind of bad for the cosmopolitan. I feel like he tried to kind of I don't know if he's trying to scam or if he's just trying to truly lay himself bare in this one moment um to Charlie Noble and it just failed miserably. And a lot of it also makes me think about how this was the last actual book that Melville wrote, and that puts like an extra sad spin on it where
It's
um
it's not that's not it though.
no.
Billy Budd's the last.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. This
But
was
it
the
just
last one
starts to
published, last novel published in his lifetime.
right,
Yeah.
right. But it just starts to feel kind of extra sad.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of like, yeah, he's like looking back, like mankind sucks.
Yeah. And then
But maybe not.
he
Gotta kind
tries
of
to
believe to
do
go on.
yeah. And then Frank Goodman tries to do this big grand thing and then he undoes it with this other grander thing. And then his new friend is just like, haha,
It's
got me good. Well, I'll see you later. And then this random rando comes in and like, yeah, I think we can say that he's poking fun at Thoreau and Emerson, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. It's I don't know why it's hard for me in this section to see, looking back, to see it as a poking fun of, as more of just like you're always gonna never be Thoreau or Emerson.
Yeah, and this is
You're never gonna be the mystic. The mystic's always gonna see what you did wrong, how you should have done it better, how you could have done it better, but you're never gonna quite learn right. And that makes me really sad.
so here's where we're set up to. So let me like read the setup for this so that we can kind of like we'll have to definitely I'm gonna reread these pages too and like have a better discussion of this next week because now I just looked at the last line and I was like, that's right. This is exactly why this turns on itself. Is that he's like, tell me about your principles. What's your philosophy? I would like you to tell me how you, the practical disciple of the philosophy I wish to know about, would in that case conduct? And he's like, a business-like view, I'd propose a case. And so the cosmopolitan's like, fine, what we're going to do is I, a common man with no more philosophy than to know what when I am comfortably warm and don't feel cold. Mind you, blah, blah, blah. For brevity, we're going to have a conversation. You shall call me Frank, and I shall call you Charlie. And you're going to explain this to me. And then the next chapter begins, Charlie, I'm going to put confidence in you. You always have, and with reason. What is it, Frank? Charlie, I'm in urgent want of money. So we're going into another conversation with the Emerson, I believe it's the Emerson character, not the Thoreau one, I forget. But with one of the two of them, to then have this conversation about their philosophy and especially in relation to want and possibly scamming, all of that's going to like reframe these couple chapters. So like what I said earlier about
Yeah,
cutting things off in the middle at a weird point
yeah.
here and having a couple weeks, like that doesn't work super well for this podcast. So we're going to go back to it.
No, I mean, but we're about to get a role play. We're gonna get take two of this scene
Mm-hmm.
of how the mystic thinks it should have been done.
So been done. So
Um,
what's your favorite line?
my favorite line on page 233. Um, the yes, so Frank and Charlie are talking, and then Charlie is just laughing and laughing, laughing. And then Frank says, "Why, Charlie, your explosions illustrate my remarks almost as aptly as the chemist's imitation volcano did his lectures." And I just like that line.
It's nice. Mine is I seldom care to be consistent. And page 271. So,
Also good.
but yeah, yep. So, anyways, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what to do. If you are listening to this on any of the podcasts, remember we have switched feeds for the 2 month review. It's linked at the top of the show notes. Subscribe to that feed, rate and review it. The other one will be going away at the end of the year, at the end of the season, anyways. And that's unfortunate. It's my fault. Anyways, rate, review, tell your friends, pass this along. Email NPR, NPR Books. It is very findable. Tell them that they shouldn't be so foolish, and that they really should crack that and then they should basically, they owe us. They owe Open Letter not just a shout out, but some sort of coverage.
Oh,
Um,
they owe an apology.
yeah, they owe
That's
an
probably what it
apology.
is.
I want something back out of this. Like, as everyone that knows me knows, I hold grudges for very long periods of time. So, this one, NPR, you're on my list. You're on my list.
You're
I
on the
always
list.
have been, to be honest. I can't, like, I don't, pro media, pro like nationally sponsored media that is like, intelligent and well thought out, all great. Also, NPR is kind of the most infuriating example of what something like that could be. It's the middle mind of everything. And that sort of centrism is the worst thing that's happened to America the past 5 years. Um,
Everybody else have a safe holiday.
Chug your raw milk. Raw milk for life. Always and forever.
Like
Chunks just